Not one of those 3 terrorist attacks went off as the terrorists had planned. And while all 3 attempts took place in the United Kingdom, make no mistake, all 3 have affected travel and security now here in the U.S. and around the world. And tonight we've learned that investigators now believe all 3 were linked together. The 2 car bombs in London and that SUV that exploded at the airport in Glasgow, Scotland. They also believe they have all the key suspects. And now it's what may tie them all together that's drawing the most interest. All eyes, as you know, have been on al-Qaeda, and now there are questions about a possible Iraq connection. Our senior investigative correspondent, Lisa Myers, is on this story in our London bureau tonight. Lisa, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Senior U.S. counterterrorism officials tell NBC News that British authorities are looking into a possible connection between doctors now in custody and al-Qaeda in Iraq, based on what are described as suspicious contacts. Amid more searches and controlled explosions, police sources say they now believe this Iraqi doctor and this doctor planted the car bombs in London and then 14 hours later rammed a Jeep Cherokee into the Glasgow airport. Investigators say they were able to quickly trace their path because when the London bombs failed to explode, the cell phones used as detonators contained a treasure trove of phone numbers used to unravel the plot.
I think that the cell phone will be seen as the catalyst to opening this particular investigation.
NBC News has learned that authorities now believe the 2 alleged bombers used taxis, trains, and buses to flee from London into the north, ending up in Glasgow. Authorities now suspect they may have hurriedly decided to mount a suicide attack on the Glasgow airport, fearing the police were closing in.
It was clearly intended to be a proper attack, but it doesn't come across as one for which any really sensible preparations have been made.
U.S. sources say British authorities do not yet have hard proof linking the Iraqi doctor or anyone else in this plot to al-Qaeda in Iraq, but are pursuing suspicious contacts that they find serious. Today, a British Muslim said the Iraqi doctor, Bilal Abdulla, had expressed support for insurgents.
He supported the insurgency in Iraq. He's, actively cheered the deaths of British and American troops in Iraq.
Being a doctor would be good cover for a terrorist because they are trusted.
They can travel widely, they do avoid suspicion, and as such, they would be potentially very useful for a militant Islamic organization.
Police still are trying to find out how this cell came together. Authorities say they now believe the key suspects in these attacks are in custody. They believe they have a reasonable picture of what happened, Brian, and are now focused on the doctor's contacts.
All right, Lisa Myers starting us off from our London